The morning sun on Kepler 442b rose just like it did every day for the past 6 months. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison stood outside the human research base, watching the orange light spread across the alien landscape. The twin suns made everything look different here, but Jake had gotten used to it. He sipped his coffee from a metal cup and checked his watch. Another peaceful day on this distant world. Jake was a United States Marine. He had served 3 tours on Earth before volunteering for this space mission. His job was simple: keep the scientists safe while they studied this new planet. So far, it had been the easiest assignment of his career. No enemies, no battles, just endless days of watching over people who got excited about alien plants and rocks. Dr. Emily Carter walked up beside him, carrying her own cup of coffee. She was the lead scientist on the team, a smart woman who could explain the most complex things in ways that made sense. Jake liked working with her because she never treated the Marines like they were stupid. "Beautiful morning," Emily said, looking out at the purple grass that covered the hills around their base. "Every morning is beautiful when nobody is shooting at you," Jake replied with a smile. Emily laughed. "You Marines always think about fighting." "It is our job to think about fighting so you can think about science," Jake said. Behind them, the base was coming to life. 23 people lived and worked here. 15 were scientists and researchers. 8 were Marines, including Jake. They had been on Kepler 442b for 6 months, and their mission was supposed to last 2 years. Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez jogged up to them. He was young, maybe 22 years old, and this was his first mission off Earth. Tommy was always eager to please and worked harder than anyone else. "Sergeant Morrison," Tommy said, slightly out of breath, "the communications officer wants to see you. We are getting some strange signals from space." Jake finished his coffee and handed the cup to Tommy. "What kind of signals?" "Big ones, Sergeant. Really big ones." Jake and Emily walked to the communications room inside the base. Lieutenant Mike Stevens was sitting at the main console, wearing headphones and looking worried. When he saw Jake, he pointed to the screen in front of him. "We have got multiple contacts approaching the system," Stevens said. "At least 20 ships, maybe more. They are huge, Sergeant. Bigger than anything we have ever built." Jake studied the screen. The computer showed dots moving toward their planet. Each dot represented a ship, and they were all moving in perfect formation. That meant intelligence. That meant purpose. "How long until they get here?" Jake asked. "Maybe 6 hours," Stevens replied. "They are slowing down like they plan to stop here." Emily looked at the screen with wide eyes. "This is it," she said quietly. "First contact with an alien species." Jake was not as excited as the scientists. In his experience, when unknown forces showed up in large numbers, it usually meant trouble. He activated his radio and called all the Marines to the main building. Within 10 minutes, all 8 Marines were gathered around Jake. He looked at each of them. Good soldiers, all of them. Tommy Rodriguez, eager and young. Corporal Lisa Hayes, tough and smart. Private David Chen, quiet but reliable. The others, Jackson, Murphy, Williams, and Blake, all experienced fighters. "We have visitors coming," Jake told them. 20 or more alien ships. We do not know if they are friendly or not, but we need to be ready for anything. The Marines nodded. They had trained for this possibility, even though nobody really expected it to happen. Jake divided them into teams and assigned positions around the base. If these aliens came in peace, the Marines would stay in the background. If they came for war, the Marines would be ready. The next 6 hours passed slowly. The scientists were excited and nervous, setting up equipment to record everything. The Marines checked their weapons and prepared defensive positions. Jake tried to stay calm, but something felt wrong about this situation. When the alien ships finally appeared in the sky, everyone stopped what they were doing to stare. The ships were massive, each one the size of a city. They blocked out the suns and cast shadows over the entire research base. The ships were dark gray and covered with strange markings that glowed with blue light. "My God," Emily whispered. "They are beautiful." Jake thought they looked like weapons. Big, dangerous weapons. The largest ship landed in the field next to the human base. The ground shook when it touched down. Steam rose from its landing engines and a ramp lowered from its belly. Jake ordered his Marines to take defensive positions but told them not to point their weapons at the aliens unless he gave the order. The first alien to walk down the ramp was 7 feet tall with gray-green skin that looked like armor. It had 4 arms, yellow eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. More aliens followed. all carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They moved in perfect formation like soldiers. The lead alien wore more decorations than the others, which probably meant it was their commander. It walked straight toward the human base, and Jake stepped forward to meet it. Emily and the other scientists stayed behind him. When the alien commander was 10 feet away, it stopped and spoke in perfect English. Its voice was deep and cold, like metal scraping against stone. "I am General Vex of the Hegemony Empire. This planet now belongs to the Dominion. All species on this world must submit to our authority immediately." Jake kept his hands away from his weapon and tried to look calm. "I am Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, United States Marine Corps. We are peaceful researchers studying this planet." General Vex stared at Jake with those yellow eyes. "Your status is irrelevant. The Dominion has conquered over 200 worlds. All species kneel before the Hegemony Empire. You will surrender your weapons and submit to our rule." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was not going to end well. "We would like to discuss this peacefully," Jake said. "Maybe we can work something out." General Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. "There is nothing to discuss. Kneel now and live as our servants, or refuse and die as rebels." Behind General Vex, 40 Hegemony soldiers raised their weapons and pointed them at the humans. The energy weapons made a high whining sound that hurt to listen to. Several of the scientists gasped and stepped backward. Jake looked at Emily, then at his Marines. Tommy Rodriguez was young and scared, but he stood firm. The other Marines were ready to fight, even though they were badly outnumbered. General Vex pointed one of his forearms directly at Jake. "You appear to be their leader. Kneel first, and your species will learn to submit properly." Jake looked at the alien commander for a long moment. He thought about his training, his duty, and his country. He thought about what it meant to be a United States Marine. Then he smiled. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile a Marine gives when he knows he is in trouble but refuses to back down. "No, sir," Jake said quietly. "United States Marines do not kneel to anyone." General Vex tilted his head like he did not understand what Jake had said. The other Hegemony soldiers looked confused too. Apparently nobody had ever refused their demands before. "You will kneel," General Vex said again, louder this time. "All species kneel to the Hegemony Empire." Jake crossed his arms over his chest and kept smiling. "Not this species, General. Not today. Not ever." The alien commander stared at Jake like he was looking at something he had never seen before. Around them, the tension grew thicker than the steam from the alien ship. Jake could hear Emily breathing hard behind him, and he could feel his Marines getting ready for a fight. General Vex raised his weapon and pointed it at Jake's chest. The barrel glowed with deadly blue energy. "Kneel," General Vex commanded. "Last chance." Jake Morrison, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, stood perfectly still. His smile never wavered. His voice never shook. "Semper Fi," he said. General Vex stood frozen for 10 long seconds after Jake refused to kneel. The alien commander had conquered worlds across the galaxy, and no species had ever said no to him before. His yellow eyes studied Jake Morrison like he was looking at a puzzle he could not solve. "Impossible," General Vex finally said. "All species submit to the Hegemony Empire. It is the natural order." Jake kept his arms crossed and his smile steady. "Maybe you just never met the right species before, General." Behind Jake, Dr. Emily Carter watched in amazement. She had studied alien behavior for years, but she had never seen anything like this. The Hegemony soldiers looked confused and unsure. Their perfect formation began to waver as they glanced at each other nervously. General Vex lowered his weapon slightly. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human." "Probably both," Jake replied. "Marines usually are." The alien commander stepped closer to Jake. His gray-green skin reflected the light from the twin suns, and Emily noticed scars covering his arms and chest. This was a warrior who had seen many battles. "I have conquered 217 worlds," General Vex said slowly. "Some species fought. Some species ran. All species eventually knelt. What makes you think your kind is different?" Jake shrugged. "Because we are Americans. We do not kneel to kings, emperors, or alien generals. We fought a war about that a long time ago." General Vex tilted his head. "Americans?" "People from the United States of America on Earth," Emily said, stepping forward carefully. "We are a nation founded on the idea that all people are created equal. We do not bow to anyone." The alien commander turned his attention to Emily. "You are their scientist?" "Dr. Emily Carter, xenobiologist," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good. You will explain your species to me. General Vex gestured with two of his arms, and his soldiers moved forward. All humans will come aboard my ship. Any resistance will result in immediate execution. Jake started to object, but Emily touched his arm. It is okay, she whispered. Maybe this is our chance to make them understand us. Private Tommy Rodriguez stepped up beside Jake. Sergeant, we should fight. No, Jake said quietly. Not yet. We need to be smart about this. The hegemony soldiers surrounded the humans with weapons drawn. Jake noticed they moved carefully, like they were not sure what the humans might do next. That was interesting. These aliens were used to easy victories, not stubborn resistance. The walk to the alien ship took 15 minutes. Up close, the vessel was even more impressive. Its hull was covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as Emily looked at them. The inside was all metal corridors and blue lights, built for beings much larger than humans. They were taken to a holding area with transparent walls. The room was clean but cold, with no furniture except metal benches built into the walls. Jake counted 23 humans total, all the scientists and Marines from the research base. Stay together, Jake told his people. Do not give them any reason to separate us. General Vex appeared outside their cell a few hours later, accompanied by several other aliens. These new aliens were different, smaller, with purple skin and larger heads. Emily guessed they might be scientists or advisors. I have been studying your species, General Vex announced. Your home planet Earth has been observed for some time. We know you fight wars among yourselves constantly. That is true, Emily admitted. Humans have always had conflicts. Yet you refuse to submit to a superior force. This makes no sense. General Vex activated a holographic display that showed images of Earth. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. Your numbers are small compared to the hegemony empire. Logic dictates that you should surrender immediately. Jake stood up and walked to the transparent wall. General, can I ask you something? Speak. How many species fought back when you conquered them? General Vex thought for a moment. Perhaps 30 or 40 species attempted resistance. And how long did they fight? Most surrendered within days. A few lasted weeks. One lasted almost a full season before accepting defeat. Jake nodded. What happened to the ones that surrendered quickly? They became servants of the Empire. They work in our factories and mines. Their children are raised to serve the hegemony. And the ones that fought longer? The same fate, but with fewer survivors. Jake smiled that Marine smile again. See, that is where you do not understand humans, General. We would rather die free than live as slaves. One of the purple-skinned aliens whispered something to General Vex in their own language. The general nodded and turned back to the humans. My science advisor tells me this is impossible. All species choose survival over death. It is basic biology. Emily stood up beside Jake. General, may I explain something about human history? Proceed. Emily took a deep breath. 300 years ago, a small group of humans decided they did not want to be ruled by a king anymore. The king had the most powerful military in the world. He had more soldiers, better weapons, and more money than the rebels. What happened? The rebels won, Emily said simply. They created the United States of America, which is where we come from. They won because they refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. General Vex looked skeptical. One victory does not prove anything. It was not just one victory, Jake said. 70 years later, we fought a war to end slavery. Americans died to free people they had never met, just because it was the right thing to do. 30 years after that, we fought to save other nations from conquest. We have done this over and over again. Tommy Rodriguez, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. My great-grandfather fought in World War II. He was captured by the enemy and put in a prison camp for 3 years. They tortured him every day, trying to make him give up information about his unit. Did he surrender? General Vex asked. No, sir. He never gave them anything. Even when they threatened to kill him, he just said his name, rank, and serial number. That is all, Emily nodded. That is what you do not understand about humans, General. When you threaten us, we do not become weaker. We become more dangerous. General Vex was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke to his advisors in their alien language. Emily caught a few words that sounded like questions, but she could not understand the conversation. You claim your species becomes stronger under pressure, General Vex said eventually. This goes against everything we know about conquered peoples. Maybe that is why you never conquered anyone like us before, Jake suggested. The alien commander stared at Jake for another long moment. "We shall test your claims. Tomorrow, you will fight our best warriors in single combat. When you lose, your people will understand the futility of resistance, and if we win," Jake asked. General Vex made that sound that might have been laughter. "Humans cannot defeat hegemony warriors. It is impossible." Jake looked around at his fellow Marines. Tommy Rodriguez was scared but determined. Corporal Lisa Hayes was already planning strategy. The others were ready to fight, even in a hopeless situation. "General," Jake said, "you're about to learn something new about humans. We do not believe in impossible." After the aliens left, the humans gathered together to discuss their situation. Emily was worried about the upcoming fights, but Jake seemed almost relaxed. "Sergeant?" Tommy asked. "Do you really think we can beat their warriors?" Jake put his hand on the young Marine's shoulder. "Tommy, I have been in impossible situations before. The trick is not to beat the impossible. The trick is to make the impossible beat itself." "What does that mean?" "It means we are going to teach these aliens why Americans do not kneel to anyone. And we are going to do it the Marine way." Emily looked at Jake with admiration and concern. "What exactly is the Marine way?" Jake Morrison smiled and looked out at the alien ship around them. "Improvise, adapt, and overcome. No matter what they throw at us, we figure out how to win." Outside their cell, the massive hegemony ship continued its journey through space, carrying its stubborn human prisoners toward an uncertain fate. But for the first time in General Vex's long career of conquest, he was beginning to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The arena was built in the center of the hegemony ship, a circular space surrounded by metal walls and bright lights. Hundreds of alien spectators filled the viewing areas, all eager to watch the humans get crushed by their champions. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the fighting floor, studying his opponent. The hegemony warrior was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating. Its 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal, and its yellow eyes showed no mercy. This creature had killed dozens of opponents from other worlds, and General Vex was certain it would make quick work of the stubborn human. "This is Corax the Destroyer," General Vex announced over the ship's communication system. "He has never lost a battle. Your champion will fight him with these weapons." A tray of alien weapons appeared on the arena floor. Jake looked them over carefully. Energy swords, plasma guns, and other devices he did not recognize. He picked up a simple metal rod about 3 feet long. It felt balanced in his hands. "You choose the weakest weapon?" General Vex sounded amused. "Sometimes the simplest tool is the best tool," Jake replied. Corax the Destroyer made a sound like angry thunder and charged across the arena. His 4 arms swung claws toward Jake's head, moving faster than anything that big should be able to move. The alien spectators cheered, expecting to see the human torn apart in seconds. Jake dropped to one knee and slid under the attack. As Corax passed over him, Jake swung the metal rod hard into the creature's knee joint. The warrior stumbled and crashed into the arena wall with a sound like breaking stone. The cheering stopped. General Vex leaned forward in his viewing seat. Corax spun around and attacked again, this time more carefully. He used all 4 arms to create a wall of slashing claws, trying to corner Jake against the arena wall. But Jake had fought in close quarters before, in places where big, strong enemies thought they had all the advantages. Jake waited until Corax committed to an attack, then stepped sideways and brought the metal rod down on the warrior's wrist. Bone cracked, and one of the creature's arms went limp. Corax roared in pain and anger, but Jake was already moving to his next position. The fight lasted 10 minutes. Jake used every trick he had learned in 20 years of combat training. He struck pressure points, attacked joints, and used Corax's own strength against him. When the alien warrior finally collapsed unconscious on the arena floor, the entire ship was silent. Jake walked to the center of the arena and looked up at General Vex. Next, the second warrior was called Thane the Brutal, and he was even bigger than Corax. This one was smarter too, studying Jake's movements before attacking. But Jake had learned something important from the first fight. These aliens were strong and fast, but they fought like they had never faced a truly skilled opponent before. Thane lasted 8 minutes. The third warrior tried to use ranged weapons, firing energy blasts from across the arena. Jake used the metal walls to deflect the shots and close the distance between them. When he got close enough, the fight ended quickly. By the time Jake defeated the fourth warrior, the alien spectators were completely quiet. General Vex looked like he was seeing something impossible. "I will fight the next one," Tommy Rodriguez announced from the holding cell where the other humans were watching. General Vex turned to stare at the young Marine. "You wish to die like your leader?" "My leader is not dead," Tommy said firmly. "And neither am I." Tommy entered the arena carrying 2 of the metal rods. His opponent was a female hegemony warrior named Zara the Swift, known for her speed and agility. She moved like liquid lightning, striking from impossible angles with weapons that hummed through the air. But Tommy Rodriguez had grown up in the streets of Los Angeles before joining the Marines. He knew how to fight opponents who were faster and more experienced than he was. He knew how to take punishment and keep fighting. Most importantly, he knew how to learn from watching other fights. Tommy studied how Jake had defeated his opponents, then adapted those lessons to his own fighting style. When Zara the Swift came at him with her lightning attacks, Tommy was ready. He used one rod to block and the other to strike, fighting with both hands in patterns that confused the alien warrior. The fight was closer than Jake's battles, but Tommy won by refusing to give up even when he was bleeding and exhausted. When Zara finally fell, Tommy raised both rods over his head and shouted something in Spanish that made the other humans cheer. General Vex stood up slowly. "Impossible. Humans cannot defeat our best warriors." "You keep using that word," Dr. Emily Carter called from the holding cell. "I do not think it means what you think it means." Corporal Lisa Hayes stepped forward next. "My turn." Her opponent was the biggest warrior yet, a creature called Mountain Breaker that stood 10 feet tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. Lisa looked tiny next to it, but she had trained in mixed martial arts since she was 12 years old. Lisa fought differently than Jake or Tommy. She was faster and more technical, using leverage and momentum to make up for her smaller size. When Mountain Breaker tried to grab her with his massive hands, she slipped away like smoke and struck back at vulnerable spots. The crowd watched in amazement as the small human woman systematically dismantled their champion. She attacked his balance, his breathing, and his confidence. When Mountain Breaker finally collapsed, he was not unconscious. He was simply too tired and hurt to continue fighting. Lisa walked over to General Vex's viewing area. Who was next? But there was no next opponent. General Vex had run out of champions. In one afternoon, 3 humans had defeated 7 of the Hegemony Empire's best warriors. The alien commander sat in his chair, staring at the humans like they were creatures from another dimension. Dr. Emily Carter used the silence to address the watching aliens.
"This is what you do not understand about humans," she said loudly.
"We do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because fighting is better than surrendering." Private David Jackson stood up in the holding cell. "We fight because someone has to." Private Murphy joined him. "We fight because it is the right thing to do." One by one, all the humans stood up. Scientists and Marines together, looking out at their alien captors with calm determination. "We fight because we are Americans," Jake Morrison said from the arena floor. "And Americans do not kneel." General Vex finally found his voice. "Your species makes no sense. You are outnumbered 1,000,000-to-1. Your technology is primitive. Your planet is small and weak, yet you refuse to accept the natural order." Jake walked over and picked up his metal rod again. "General, there is something you need to understand about the natural order. In nature, sometimes the small fish eat the big fish. Sometimes the prey becomes the predator. And sometimes the impossible happens because nobody told it that it was impossible." The alien commander looked around his ship at the hundreds of spectators. They were all staring at the humans with expressions Jake had never seen on alien faces before. It took him a moment to recognize what he was seeing. It was respect. "Take them back to their holding cell," General Vex ordered his soldiers. "I must consult with my advisors." As the humans were led away from the arena, Jake heard conversations starting among the alien spectators. They were talking quietly, but he caught enough words to understand they were discussing what they had just witnessed. Back in their cell, the humans gathered around Jake, Tommy, and Lisa. Dr. Carter examined their injuries while the others talked excitedly about the fights. "That was incredible," one of the scientists said. "You made it look easy." "It was not easy," Jake replied, "but it was necessary." Emily finished treating Tommy's cuts and looked at Jake seriously. "What happens now?" Jake sat down on one of the metal benches and looked out at the alien ship around them. "Now we wait, and we get ready for whatever comes next." "Do you think we changed their minds?" Tommy asked. "Maybe. But changing minds is not enough. We need to change the whole situation. Lisa Hayes sat down beside Jake. What do you mean? Jake Morrison smiled. And for the first time since their capture, it was not his marine smile. It was something warmer, something that looked almost like hope. I mean, it is time to stop fighting their battles and start fighting our own. Jake Morrison spent the next 3 days watching and listening. The hegemony soldiers who guarded the humans were different now. They still carried weapons and followed orders, but they moved more carefully around their prisoners. Some of them even made eye contact when they brought food, something they had never done before. Dr. Emily Carter noticed it too. They are afraid of us now, she whispered during one of their quiet moments. Not afraid that we will hurt them, but afraid of what we represent. What do we represent? Tommy Rodriguez asked. Something they have never seen before, Jake replied. The idea that maybe the Empire is not as powerful as they thought. General Vex had not visited the holding cell since the arena fights. According to the alien guards, he was spending all his time in meetings with his advisors and other ship commanders. The humans could only guess what those meetings were about, but Jake had a feeling the discussions were not going well for the Empire. On the 4th day, everything changed. Jake was awakened by the sound of alarms throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and he could hear alien voices shouting commands in their harsh language. Through the transparent walls of their cell, he watched hegemony soldiers running back and forth with weapons and equipment. What is happening? Emily asked, joining Jake at the cell wall. Either they are under attack, or they are preparing to attack someone else, Jake replied. A few minutes later, General Vex appeared with a group of heavily armed guards. The alien commander looked tired and angry, like he had not slept in days. His yellow eyes focused on Jake with an expression that could have melted metal. Your planet has responded to our presence, General Vex announced. Earth's military forces are mobilizing. They are sending ships to this system. Jake felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his expression calm. Good. Maybe now we can talk like civilized people. There will be no talking, General Vex snapped. Your species has proven to be a threat to the natural order of the galaxy. The hegemony empire cannot allow such dangerous ideas to spread. What dangerous ideas? Emily asked. The idea that smaller species can resist larger ones. The idea that servants can become warriors. The idea that the empire can be defeated. General Vex paced back and forth in front of the cell. Already our other subject species are asking questions. Some have even attempted small rebellions. Jake smiled. That is what happens when people see someone standing up to bullies. We are not bullies, General Vex said angrily. We are the natural rulers of this galaxy. Strong species dominate weak species. It is the way things have always been. Maybe it is time for things to change, Lisa Hayes said from her spot on the metal bench. General Vex turned his attention to her. Change is chaos. Chaos is destruction. The Empire brings order and stability to countless worlds. The Empire brings slavery and fear, Tommy Rodriguez replied. That is not the same thing. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was colder than before. Your Earth forces will arrive in approximately 6 hours. When they do, we will destroy them completely. After that, we will return to your homeworld and eliminate your species entirely. You will try, Jake said simply. We will succeed. Your little planet has perhaps 100 ships. We have 10,000. Your weapons are crude chemical rockets and primitive lasers. Our weapons can crack continents. This is not a war, human. This is an extermination. Emily stepped forward. General, you do not have to do this. Our species could work together. We could share knowledge and technology. We could explore the galaxy as partners instead of enemies. General Vex made that sound that might have been laughter. Partners? Your species refuses to kneel. How can there be partnership without proper submission? Maybe that is the problem, Jake said. Maybe you have been looking for submission when you should have been looking for cooperation. Cooperation requires trust. Trust requires predictability. Your species is completely unpredictable. Jake nodded. You got that right. After General Vex left, the humans sat in silence for a while. Everyone was thinking about the approaching battle and what it would mean for Earth. Finally, Emily spoke up. Jake, do you really think our forces can win against 10,000 alien ships? Honestly? Probably not. At least not in a straight fight. Then what are we going to do? Jake looked around the cell, studying every detail of the alien architecture and technology. We are going to do what Marines do best. We are going to cause trouble. What kind of trouble? Tommy asked. The kind that makes it impossible for the enemy to focus on fighting our people. Jake pointed to the control panel beside their cell door. Emily, you have been studying their technology for days. Can you figure out how their systems work? Emily examined the panel more closely. Maybe. Their computers seem to use mathematical principles similar to ours, but with some differences. It might be possible to interface with their systems if I had the right tools. What kind of tools? Something to bypass their security protocols. Something to access their main computer network. Emily thought for a moment. Actually, there is something interesting about their system architecture. They seem to use a very rigid hierarchical structure for everything. Their military, their society, even their computers. What does that mean? It means they probably have never had to defend against chaotic, unpredictable attacks. All their security is designed to stop organized, systematic attempts to break in. Jake smiled. But humans do not attack in organized, systematic ways. Exactly. We improvise, we adapt. We do things that do not make sense to anyone except us. Lisa Hayes joined the conversation. So what is the plan? Jake looked at his fellow Marines and the scientists who had become his trusted companions. The plan is to escape from this cell, take control of this ship, and use it to help our people fight the rest of the fleet. That is impossible, one of the scientists said. We are prisoners on an alien ship in the middle of space, surrounded by thousands of enemy soldiers. You are right, Jake agreed. It is impossible. That is why it might actually work. Tommy Rodriguez grinned. I like impossible plans. Good. Because this one is really impossible. Jake gathered everyone around him and began to explain what he had in mind. The plan was simple in concept but incredibly difficult to execute. They would wait until the battle with Earth's forces began, when most of the ship's crew would be focused on the fight. Then they would break out of their cell, split into teams, and take control of critical ship systems. Emily would lead a team to the computer core and try to sabotage the ship's weapons and communication systems. Lisa and half the Marines would secure the engine room. Jake and the remaining Marines would head for the command center and try to capture General Vex. What about the rest of us? Asked Dr. Peterson, one of the other scientists. You stay here and make it look like we are all still in the cell, Jake replied. Use whatever you can find to create dummy figures that will fool the security cameras. For how long? Long enough. Emily studied the cell door control panel again. I think I can override the lock mechanism, but it will take time. How much time? Maybe an hour. Maybe more. Jake checked his watch. The Earth forces will be here in 4 hours. That gives us 3 hours to take this ship. And if we fail? Tommy asked. Jake Morrison looked at each of his people, Marines and scientists, all of them Americans who had volunteered to explore the unknown reaches of space. All of them people who believed in something bigger than themselves. If we fail, at least we fail fighting, he said. And maybe that will be enough to inspire our people back home to keep fighting too. The next hour passed slowly as Emily worked on the door controls. Jake used the time to review every detail of the ship's layout that he had observed during their time as prisoners. He memorized guard rotations, equipment locations, and emergency procedures. Finally, Emily looked up from the control panel. I think I can open it. Are you sure? No, but I'm going to try anyway. She pressed a sequence of buttons on the alien interface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the transparent wall of their cell flickered and disappeared. Jake Morrison stepped out of the holding cell and into the corridor of the alien ship. For the first time in over a week, he was free. All right, people, he said quietly. Time to show these aliens what Americans can do when we stop playing by their rules. Jake Morrison moved through the alien corridor like a ghost. 20 years of military training had taught him how to be invisible when he needed to be, and right now he needed to be very invisible. Behind him, Tommy Rodriguez and David Jackson followed in perfect silence, their bare feet making no sound on the metal floors. The plan was working so far. Emily Carter and her team had reached the computer core without being detected, while Lisa Hayes was leading her group toward the engine room. Jake's mission was the most dangerous: capture the command center and take control of the ship's weapons systems. As they moved deeper into the ship, Jake began to notice something strange. They passed several holding areas similar to their own cell, but these contained other species, aliens that Jake had never seen before. Purple-skinned beings with large eyes, small furry creatures that looked almost like Earth animals, tall, thin aliens with silver skin and no hair. All of them were prisoners. "Sergeant," Tommy whispered, pointing to one of the cells. "Look at that." Inside the cell was a group of aliens that looked almost human except for their blue-tinted skin and pointed ears. They were watching the humans with expressions of amazement and hope. Jake made a quick decision. He signaled to Tommy to watch the corridor, then approached the cell controls. Using the techniques Emily had taught him, he managed to override the lock mechanism. The cell wall disappeared and the blue-skinned aliens stared at him in shock. "Who are you?" one of them asked in accented but understandable English. "United States Marines," Jake replied quietly. "We are escaping." "Want to come with us?" The alien leader, a female with intricate markings on her face, stepped forward. "You are the humans who defeated the hegemony champions?" "That is us. My name is Arya of the Centauri Republic. We have been prisoners for 3 years. She looked at the other humans with something like worship in her eyes. "We heard about your battles. Word spread throughout the ship that a species had finally stood up to the Empire. Can you fight?" Jake asked. "We will die fighting before we remain slaves another day," Arya replied. Jake smiled. "Good answer." Within minutes, Jake's small team had grown to 15 beings. They moved from cell to cell, freeing every prisoner they could find. Each species had the same reaction: amazement that someone was actually fighting back against the hegemony empire, followed by immediate willingness to join the rebellion. By the time they reached the command center, Jake was leading an army of 40 liberated aliens, all of them eager for revenge against their captors. The command center was heavily guarded, but the guards were not expecting an attack from inside their own ship. Jake's improvised army overwhelmed them in seconds, using captured hegemony weapons and their own desperate fury. General Vex was standing at the main command console when Jake burst through the door. The alien commander turned around slowly, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he said for what seemed like the 100th time since meeting humans. "You really need to learn some new words," Jake replied, pointing a captured plasma rifle at the general's chest. On the main viewing screen, Jake could see space filled with ships. Earth's forces had arrived, maybe 100 vessels of various sizes, all of them looking tiny compared to the massive hegemony fleet. But they were not retreating. Instead, they were forming attack formations and moving toward the alien ships. "Your people are brave but foolish," General Vex said. "They cannot win this battle." "Maybe not," Jake agreed. "But they are not fighting alone anymore." At that moment, Emily Carter's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Jake, I am in the computer core. I have access to their main systems." "What can you do?" "I can disrupt their fleet coordination. I can disable weapons on several ships, and I have found something very interesting in their database." "What?" "Records of all the species they have conquered, all the worlds they have enslaved, and the locations of prison ships throughout their empire, ships just like this one, filled with captured beings from hundreds of different worlds." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "How many ships?" "Thousands. And Jake, some of those beings have been prisoners for decades. They are all listening to our communications right now." General Vex stepped toward Jake, his forearms raised. "You do not understand what you are doing. If you disrupt the Empire, chaos will spread across the galaxy. Millions will die." "Millions are already dying," Jake replied. "They are just dying as slaves instead of as free beings." Suddenly, Lisa Hayes' voice joined the conversation. "Jake, we have control of the engine room. But we have got bigger problems. The other ships in the fleet are trying to communicate with this vessel, and they are getting suspicious. Can you disable their weapons?" "Working on it now." On the viewing screen, Jake watched as the battle began. Earth ships opened fire on the hegemony fleet with everything they had: missiles, lasers, and weapons Jake did not recognize. The alien ships returned fire with devastating energy beams that could destroy an Earth vessel with a single hit. But something strange was happening. Several of the hegemony ships were not firing back. Their weapon systems were dark, disabled by Emily's sabotage efforts. Other ships seemed to be having communication problems, unable to coordinate their attacks properly. "Emily," Jake called out, "can you send a message to all those prison ships?" "Already working on it," she replied. "I am broadcasting on all frequencies, telling them what we have learned about fighting the hegemony." General Vex made a sound like breaking glass. "You are destroying everything we have built." Good, Jake said simply. Arya of the Centauri Republic, who had been watching the battle in silence, suddenly spoke up. General Vex, do you know what my people call your empire? The alien commander glared at her but did not respond. We call it the Long Darkness. For 3 years we thought it would never end. We thought we would die as slaves and our children would be born as slaves and their children after them. She stepped closer to the general, her blue eyes burning with anger. But today we learned something new. We learned that the darkness can be broken. Throughout the ship, alarms began sounding. Jake could hear fighting in the corridors as more prisoners broke free from their cells and joined the rebellion. The hegemony soldiers, who had never faced a coordinated uprising before, were completely unprepared for the chaos. On the viewing screen, the space battle was turning into something unprecedented. Some of the hegemony ships were firing on each other as sabotage systems caused confusion and friendly fire incidents. Earth's forces, though still outnumbered, were fighting with the desperate courage of people protecting their homeworld. Jake, Emily's voice came through the speakers again. I have established contact with 23 prison ships in this system alone. They are all beginning uprisings. The hegemony crews do not know how to handle this kind of coordinated rebellion. What about the rest of their fleet? Some ships are maintaining formation, but many are breaking off to deal with internal problems. The prisoners are not just fighting. They are sabotaging systems, disrupting communications, and sharing information about hegemony weaknesses. Jake looked at General Vex, who was staring at the chaos on the viewing screen like he was watching the end of his world. General, Jake said quietly, you want to know what makes humans different from every other species you have conquered? Vex turned his yellow eyes toward Jake but said nothing. We do not fight just for ourselves. We fight for everyone who cannot fight for themselves. And we never give up even when the odds are impossible. Tommy Rodriguez, who had been guarding the door, suddenly called out, Sergeant, we have got company coming. Lots of company. Jake could hear the sound of running feet and alien voices in the corridor outside. The remaining loyal hegemony forces were converging on the command center, trying to retake control of their ship. How many? Jake asked. Maybe 100 soldiers. They have heavy weapons. Jake looked around the command center at his makeshift army of humans and liberated aliens. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the hegemony forces did not have: the absolute certainty that they would rather die free than live as slaves. All right. People, Jake said, checking his captured plasma rifle. This is where we make our stand. Arya of the Centauri Republic moved to stand beside him. For 3 years I dreamed of this moment. What moment? The moment when we finally get to fight back. The door to the command center exploded inward, and hegemony soldiers poured through the opening. Jake Morrison raised his weapon and smiled that Marine smile one more time. Semper Fi, he said, and opened fire. The battle for the command center lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, Jake Morrison stood among the wreckage, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still breathing. Around him, humans and liberated aliens tended to their injured and counted their dead. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. General Vex lay unconscious near the main console, struck down by a plasma blast during the fighting. Tommy Rodriguez had a broken arm, but he was smiling as he watched the main viewing screen. The space battle outside was turning into something no one had ever seen before. Jake, Emily Carter's voice came through the damaged speakers. You need to see this. Jake limped over to the communication panel. What is it? The rebellion is spreading faster than we ever imagined. Prison ships throughout the entire sector are reporting uprisings. Hundreds of different species are fighting back simultaneously. On the viewing screen, the hegemony fleet was in chaos. Ships that had dominated the galaxy for centuries were being destroyed or captured by their own prisoners. The disciplined formation that had arrived at Kepler 442b was now a scattered mess of burning hulks and vessels fleeing in every direction. Earth's forces, led by Admiral Sarah Wilson aboard the flagship USS Constitution, had taken advantage of the confusion to launch devastating attacks on the remaining enemy ships. Human vessels, small and primitive by hegemony standards, were outmaneuvering the massive alien ships and striking at vulnerable points with surgical precision. Admiral Wilson is requesting communication. Lisa Hayes reported from her position at the tactical station. Put her through, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at a stern-faced woman in a United States Navy uniform. Behind her, he could see the bridge of an Earth warship buzzing with activity. Staff Sergeant Morrison, Admiral Wilson said with a slight smile. I hear you have been causing trouble. Yes, ma'am. Just doing my job. Outstanding work, Sergeant. Your intelligence reports have been invaluable. We never would have known about the prison ship network without your people's efforts. Jake looked around the damaged command center at the aliens who had fought beside him. Ma'am, it was not just us. Every species the hegemony enslaved was ready to fight. They just needed someone to show them it was possible. Understood. What is your current status? We have control of this vessel, and the enemy commander is our prisoner. Dr. Carter has access to their computer systems and is coordinating with uprisings throughout the sector. Admiral Wilson nodded approvingly. Excellent. We are going to need that ship and those computer records. The Joint Chiefs have decided that this war does not end until every prison ship in hegemony space has been liberated. Tommy Rodriguez, despite his broken arm, managed to straighten up and salute. Ma'am, does that mean we are taking the fight to them? That is exactly what it means, Marine. The hegemony empire made a mistake when they threatened Earth. They are about to learn that when you mess with Americans, you get American results. Over the next few hours, the full scope of the victory became clear. The hegemony fleet that had seemed so invincible was now reduced to less than 30 ships, most of them damaged and fleeing toward the edge of the system. More importantly, the uprising had spread to over 300 prison ships across multiple star systems. Emily Carter worked tirelessly with the alien computer systems, sending tactical information and encouragement to rebellions throughout hegemony space. The rigid command structure that had made the Empire so efficient was now working against them, as coordinated uprisings disrupted their ability to respond to the crisis. Jake, Emily said during a brief break in her work. I have been analyzing their database. The hegemony empire has conquered over 400 worlds, but they rule through fear and intimidation. They have never faced a coordinated resistance movement before. What does that mean for us? It means we have a real chance to end this. Not just win this battle, but actually destroy their entire system of oppression. 3 days later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution as it led a combined fleet of Earth ships and liberated alien vessels toward the hegemony home system. The fleet was not large by galactic standards, but it represented something that had never existed before, a true alliance of free species working together. Admiral Wilson approached Jake as he watched the stars stream past on the main viewer. Sergeant, I have got new orders for you from Earth Command. Yes, ma'am. You are being promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and given command of the 1st Interstellar Marine Regiment. Congratulations. Jake accepted the promotion quietly, but his attention was focused on something else. Ma'am, what happens after we win this war? What do you mean? I mean, we are going to liberate hundreds of worlds and dozens of different species. How do we make sure something like the hegemony empire never happens again? Admiral Wilson was quiet for a moment. That is a good question, Colonel. What do you think? Jake looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. I think we teach them what we learned a long time ago. That government should serve the people, not the other way around. That all people, human or alien, have the right to be free. You want to export democracy to the galaxy? I want to export the idea that nobody has to kneel to anybody else. Ever. The final battle took place in orbit around the hegemony home world, a massive planet covered in industrial cities and military installations. The enemy had gathered their remaining forces for one last desperate fight, but they were facing something they had never encountered before, an alliance of species that refused to be conquered. Jake led a boarding party onto the hegemony capital ship, fighting through corridors filled with desperate alien soldiers. When they finally reached the Emperor's throne room, they found the ruler of the Galactic Empire sitting alone, staring at reports of uprisings on every world under his control. You have destroyed everything, the Emperor said in perfect English. Chaos will consume the galaxy. No, Jake replied. Freedom will consume the galaxy. There is a difference. The war officially ended 6 months later when the last hegemony stronghold surrendered to the combined forces of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Jake Morrison, now a full colonel, stood with Admiral Wilson and representatives from over 200 liberated worlds as they signed the Treaty of Earth, establishing the new Galactic Democratic Union. But for Jake, the real victory had happened much earlier. in the arena of a hegemony ship where 3 humans had refused to be defeated by impossible odds. That was the moment when the galaxy learned that some species would rather die fighting than live kneeling. 2 years after the war ended, Jake returned to Earth for the first time since leaving Kepler 442b. He was assigned to train a new generation of interstellar Marines at the Academy in Virginia, teaching young soldiers how to fight in the vast reaches of space. During his first class, a young cadet raised her hand and asked, "Colonel Morrison, what is the most important thing to remember when fighting alien enemies?" Jake thought about General Vex, about the arena battles, about the moment when he had looked at a superior force and simply said no. "Remember that you are an American," he said finally. "Remember that your ancestors fought and died so that you would never have to kneel to anyone. And remember that freedom is not something you can give to people. It is something they have to take for themselves. Our job is just to show them how." The cadet nodded seriously. "And if the odds are impossible, sir?" Jake Morrison smiled. Not his Marine combat smile, but something warmer, something that carried the weight of experience and the promise of hope. "Then you smile right back at those impossible odds," he said, "and you show them what Americans do when someone tells us we cannot win." Outside the Academy windows, the sky was filled with ships from dozens of different worlds, all flying under the flag of the Galactic Democratic Union. Earth had become the center of a new kind of empire, not one built on conquest and fear, but one founded on the simple idea that every being in the galaxy had the right to stand up straight and refuse to kneel. Jake looked out at those ships and remembered a moment on a distant planet when a Marine had faced an alien general and said 2 simple words that changed everything. "No, sir." Sometimes, Jake reflected, the most important battles are won not with weapons or tactics, but with the simple refusal to accept that defeat is inevitable. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stand up, look impossible odds in the eye and smile. Because Americans do not kneel. Not to kings, not to emperors, and not to alien generals who think they own the galaxy. And now, thanks to 3 humans who refused to accept the unacceptable, neither did anyone else. The galaxy was free and it intended to stay that way.